Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of PW Legal World Saturday Solutions. The issue of menstrual leave has gained quite the traction in recent years. While there is an increasing recognition for workplaces to accommodate the unique needs of all, as DEI initiatives or beyond, we would like to take up the debate on menstrual leaves. In a recent interview, Siddhamurthy eloquently expressed the importance of accepting the physical and emotional changes that accompany menstruation while continuing to pursue one's interests and responsibilities. So let's navigate the delicate balance between compassion and practicality in the workplace together today. Let's explore both sides of the coin. While some women may not seek menstrual leaves, others may prefer flexibility or comfort leaves. Let's hear it from our panel today what they think about it. It is time to take the pulse of the industry and get actionable takeaways for workplaces considering the implementation of such policies or guidance for those who are on the fence about it. So, menstrual leave policies, how to balance compassion and practicality in the modern world. To make this discussion possible, we have with us on our esteemed panel Ms. Meghna Mishra, partner Karanjawala & Co., Ms. Payal Chawla, founder Just Contractors, Ms. Pooja Mehtani, General Counsel and Company Secretary, Sun Life Global Solutions, Ms. Rakhi Viswas, co-managing partners, Pavia Tech Law. I am Ashima Uri, your host for today. Thank you all for joining us. Let me open this discussion with Meghna today. Meghna, what are your thoughts on the topic itself? In your experience, how have menstrual leaves or the need for menstrual leaves come to you in terms of the people you work with or in your personal life yourself?
Hi, Ashima. Good to be back with you on a show after a while.
Thank you.
And hello to all. I think let me put it in a perspective of when I had commenced my practice and joined the profession. We were certainly not comfortable discussing period cramps or menstrual requirements, which I find is a very positive change in the new generation today. They talk about it, and it's not limited to, my being a woman and therefore that comfort. Even if there is a male counterpart or a partner, his team members would feel comfortable in addressing this issue. So I think we've traveled a long distance from where this was something which was a taboo topic, which was never addressed. But specifically in our firm, we don't have designated leave policy for purposes of menstrual leave. But that said, I think, this is also something, it's something that you need to accept. It's biology. It's not something, it's not an ailment that
Absolutely.
someone is suffering from. So it's something that we need to all across accept it and move forward with it. And whether or not in times to come it will become something that will be accepted like maternity leave has been over a period of time remains to be seen. And frankly, there are pros and there are cons, Ashima, of menstrual leave being, when we are in a cutthroat competitive world where women are unfortunately still trying to match up to male counterparts, and in fact they are better than them according to me. But where unfortunately, and I think that mindset is what needs to change, that you need to somehow prove a point, and I think what you said rightly was very correct, that the DIE policies which are there, so we are talking about more inclusive endeavors being made by all. So inclusivity not just for gender, so not why limited only to menstrual leave policy, also for anyone who's physically challenged. I think we are coming as a workplace must be inclusive, must be able to give that comfort to whoever wants to join the workplace. So those are my initial thoughts.
Right, Meghna, thank you. You've spent over 25 years in dispute resolution, litigation, no less. And so, just to get a one-word answer from you, have you actually come across women in litigation really going around saying it's a bad day for me because, X, Y, Z? So how often does that happen?
I don't think we are saying it openly, but yes, you just, for any other issue, if you have, you will seek accommodation on account of some personal difficulty. We are not saying openly in courts yet that on account of my menstrual cycle, I need a leave. No, that's not something that I've seen yet. And
Right.
frankly, I don't see that happening immediately as well. Also, I think in litigation, the days are very, very long. So, you are running and you're up and about on your feet for 6, 7 hours in a day. So if someone is having some difficulty, then definitely that accommodation will be required.
Right. Thank you, Meghna. I'll come to Payal now. Payal, you run a Delhi-based and country's only all-women law firm. Your opinion on this is, the one that I'm looking for. How do you balance as a leader and also getting your work done? Because one question that will be asked around is, if we give leaves out like that, how do we balance work? Payal, would like you to unmute, please.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So, just to begin by echoing what Meghna had said, it's not a disability, but at the same time, you have to realize that for between 5 to 10% women in the world, period pain can be debilitating. And that we have to have a recognition of that. Nobody is saying that women are entitled to work lesser than men, or those that suffer greater period pain should be able to work lesser than the others. All that women, I think, are saying is accommodate us for those days where we are feeling terribly unwell. For some of us, period pain uh, may not be debilitating in that sense, but I think 80%, the stats say that 80% of the women feel some sort of discomfort. You have to carry your pads around. Imagine for men, you're sort of leaking through the day. It's not comfortable. A lot of women get nausea, some get diarrhea. There is terrible cramping. So that would happen to any man, woman on a particular day. If you're sick, you call in sick. And I like what Pooja said, that you don't have to call it period leave. You may not want to have extra days, but the fact that someone is unwell, there has to be a recognition that menstruation can cause all of these, and you can be terribly sick on a particular day.
Right.
Accommodate them. And today, post COVID, I think the one silver lining of COVID was the fact that there is today an all around worldwide recognition that there can be a hybrid model.
Yes,
Everyone does not need to come into work. So if
absolutely.
somebody has discomfort and they want to have a hot water bottle and don't want the rest of the office to see it, can sit out of their bed and work. Somebody may be terribly unwell and they can't, and they can make up for it on a Saturday or a Sunday. So when people are sick, you don't get a pass not to ever do your work. You just have to then make it up at some other point of time. So I honestly, frankly, don't see what the fuss is about. But at the same time, I'm glad for the fuss, because then it causes the recognition of the fact for others and men to understand that this is a very difficult time for a woman, and she may require that additional time off.
Right, Kyle, very well said. Making a fuss is what we're trying to do. At least get the conversation going and know what, really, where is the resistance. So, Pooja, coming to you, you've been a champion for DEI initiatives at your organization. How have things been for you? What are your opening remarks?
Thanks, Ashima. As Meghna and Payal just laid the context very well, and I think what we couldn't stir, nature helped us with the pandemic stir a lot of things, and I think we are at a much better place. If I just look at my personal journey, I mean, I've been blessed with good people around always, wherever I've worked. But, there was a personal block, there was a block in mind that can we talk about it? There were difficult days, but were we comfortable to even go up to somebody and say that, hey, I'm encountering this problem today? And now is a situation I can share. Personally, there was a situation that I was in which probably 20 years back I won't have shared with anybody, but I was comfortable to go and, talk about it. And when I did, I got to know, and this is with the senior most leaders, that even going beyond menstruation, when women are going menopause or premenopause, and the problems that they encounter, right? And this is being talked about, at least in our organization, and I've been seeing, working in this space, that it's become quite normal.
Mhm.
And so the discussion is going more towards wellness. Wellness is the central focus area for all organizations. And it's not just about, gender specific issues. In fact,
Yeah,
we have had women coming to us, and it could be divided. Some go through a debilitating experience, a limiting experience, where they would want specific leaves. Others may not want it. But at least recognize the fact that there could be an issue with somebody, irrespective of gender, as Meghna also said, where they would need wellness leaves. People have carer responsibilities. So at least, the situation that we are in, where we are solving for the future of work, how will the operating models emerge? Now we are in a hybrid scenario. Some organizations are returning 100% to work, but there is an element of flexibility that's there with everybody. People know, and employers, organizations recognize these days that, flexibility is not going anywhere, right? Whether it is gender specific or otherwise. And, I can talk more about, we are expanding the definition of diversity, that too taking into account the inputs that we have received from our women employees, that don't just talk
yeah,
about us. It is for the people with disabilities, it is for the LGBTQIA plus community. What are their needs? How do we cater to them? And in fact, if I could share here, we've even gone beyond being inclusive. We've officially embraced belonging. And when you work around, how do you encourage people to bring their whole selves to work? There's a lot more that you have to take into account. People should
right,
feel belong at the workplace. And therefore, measures across, what are the specific needs? Are people comfortably able to come out and disclose that this is what I am feeling?
right,
Right? And
Pooja.
that definitely would include, some women going through a problem, and that happens in our teams, that at least we've reached that stage that somebody is not feeling like coming to work, and has their menstruating periods, and they could say, oh, hey, I can just work from home, will it be comfortable? And we are actually fine with it. So
Yeah.
it's a good scenario. I don't, but there's a lot of work to be done, because this is happening in good organizations.
So
And
let me
Meghna,
just
and
put
yeah,
this in context, Pooja. So you're saying that at least now, people who are seeking leaves are able to say, uh, you know, I need leave for not just because I'm under the weather, but because I'm going through
yes,
my period. So I think that's a good point to take away from here, that women are actually at least putting out the right cause. You don't have to brush it under the carpet by saying, oh, I'm unwell, or, XYZ reasons for not showing up or wanting flexibility. Rakhi, if we have you, I'd like to come to you. I can't see your visual at the moment. Um, I think Rakhi's away for a moment. So let me come back to Meghna. Meghna, uh, what has been your experience in terms of policies around? Can we gather some intel from you as to what are you seeing in the industry, so to say, in an informal setup where people are discussing whether or not to have such policies?
Well, there is discussion for sure, and I think with the bill having come to the parliament, it went to Supreme Court in a petition as well. That discussion has started, but my own personal view is this, that, as you know, and I think I read Zomato had, for example, and Byju's, they'd offered menstrual leave already. Some law firms have also now got menstrual leave policies in place. But it's not just about a formal policy, according to me. It's a change of mindset, which is a very slow process. And I think, taking from what Pooja said, the fact that in a workplace you need to be comfortable, you need to feel that included, that here is an organization that is also looking after me. So
Yeah.
just a policy or just putting the menstrual leave, according to me, is not what will be the long term solution. And while there are some organizations that have started to put this, I also want to frankly take the bull by the horn and flag this, because there is still a lot of discussion about how if women take menstrual leave, then that is just one more factor. There is, when the Me Too episodes happened, unfortunately, a lot of people had this attitude that, oh, let's not hire women. It's unnecessary, and now, there are sexual harassment complaints, and let's just steer clear of that. And I'm sorry to say that even a lot of lawyers have that mindset. So that I thought was extremely unfortunate fallout of, instead of embracing issues, and unfortunately, I fear that if the menstrual policy comes through, as a formal, um, enforced statutory mechanism, that again is going to be something that men will try and throw. So I think as a society, that mindset has to change, because you see, if you look at it historically, women were also derided for childbirth. So when that maternity leave needs to be given. So I think we've come a long distance from that point. So
Yeah.
it will be a circle, and but I think it's a starting point, is what I'm saying. So yes, while you see of sporadically, a very few, minuscule is the number, is where we are right now. In terms of formal policies for menstrual leave.
Right. Right, Meghna.
But
Thank you.
I think we should start talking about it, and the more we talk about it, the more we discuss it,
Right.
perhaps the mindset will keep changing.
Absolutely, Meghna. You make a great point about embracing this in the formal setup. I will quickly go to Raki before I come to you, Payal, on the point that Meghna made. Raki, your thoughts. You've spent over 26 years with multinational organizations. So, what is it that you're seeing between, say, this issue with India and in other places across the world? You're on mute, Raki. Sorry.
Sure. Thank you, Ashma, for that question. First of all, I'll start with some statistics because it's important to us why we are having and to know why we are having this discussion. Okay. So, worldwide, about 190 million people, women suffer from endometriosis, which is and dysmenorrhea, which is the extreme pain and debilitating conditions, and averaged USD 2640, which is 2,640, is spent on supervised care and hospitalization expenses. Okay, so that is the gravity of the suffering around the world in terms of uh, the menstrual pain. Okay, and increasingly what is happening due to the environmental changes and the delay in childbirth, women's bodies are undergoing a lot of impact of these factors, and therefore the number of people suffering this is also growing up. So we need to normalize this conversation, and also I would say maternity is gender specific, posh is gender specific, but posh has been made gender neutral in certain organizations. Why not make menstrual leave a part of the wellness programs instead of specifically calling it out as a menstrual leave? Because that kind of one, it highlights the woman suffering menstruation to the entire team, which is not a very happy situation to be in. And second is that it kind of is seen as a gender advantageous position to be in, which I think we should kind of refrain from, and due to the reasons that Meghna has also talked about, that could result in uh, discouraging the hiring of women, for example.
Right.
Okay, so from a global perspective, I would say that the approach and the encouragement is towards having it as a gender inclusive program. So men get wellness leave, women get wellness leave, and there is no discrimination. In fact, I've had an Australian client who was under discussion for designing their menstrual leave, and then they said, no, we receive feedback from our employees, why not make it a gender neutral thing and give it as a part of the wellness leave or the sick leave, and then that kind of neutralizes this negative connotation around it. And there Spain has given menstrual leave as a part of its policy, so it was the first country in Europe to legislate on that. Increasingly we are seeing that we will go towards some kind of a flexibility of working during those periods, right? So we will have a situation where the conversation will be more normalized, and where women will have one, the kind of the leverage to approach their managers and seek that leave, and second, the organization will be okay with it. From a personal experience, I can tell you, 10 years back, I walked up to my manager and said, I need a biorhythm leave. Okay, I call it biorhythm. I don't call it menstruation. I don't like that word because it's kind of, it's a very loaded word. So, and his answer was, what's that? And I had to explain to him, sir, it is another word for menstruation. So he said, oh, okay. So what do you want to do? I said, I want to take a leave. And so he said, but it's a day and there are several meetings. I said, I'll do the meetings. And this was before, COVID, and when I was in the corporate life. And so he said, how will you attend? I said, I'll join by a call. And he said, fine. And women in my team, in fact, I called them and I told them that, look, I know that it is a special time for everyone. So why don't we, devise some nice, exciting words around that? So we call it high energy days and low energy days. So low energy days, you get a little bit of flexibility to work around. And high energy days, obviously, whatever other commitments to the workplace, you fulfill that. So we are moving, countries are moving, corporates are moving towards that. But my personal take is, don't kind of call it a menstrual leave, because it kind of just highlights a woman's period to the entire world, which is not required. And second, it kind of creates barriers between genders in terms of entitlement to well-being. And I would personally profess a holistic well-being program for every organization, which has similar rights for transgenders and men and women. So those were my thoughts.
Thank you, Raki. Great term here, biorhythm leave. I think we have smiles across the panel on that. So we've actually come out with a good word here. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Payal, coming back to you on the points made by Meghna and Raki on how this actually comes back to the question of hiring. When you have these benefits, or I like to call them gender just policies, because, it is just what it is. Women need it, so women need it. I mean, it's a biological need. Some women want it. Your views on actually that impairing hiring in, you have a law firm with all women coming to office. So how do you really perceive it as a leader of the organization, not just a woman?
So look, I run a all-women organization, and as part of that, all of this comes with it. Menstruation, pregnancy, all of the issues that are related to women is part of the package. And frankly, I don't know how many people have actually had the experience of all-women teams, but they're terribly productive. It's, I think it's just part of being a woman to be able to pack so much into the day. I have my office manager gets up early in the morning, cooks for family, sends the kids to school, is at work at 9 o'clock. Then there's the third shift that she goes back to, and it's just all just seamlessly done. So I don't think we felt that, and also being a an all women firm, there's a comfort around the conversation. So they'll put it on the group saying, I have my periods, I'm not coming into work today. Or but at the same time, one has to understand, all professionals, and we are a highly skilled job. uh, and there are, I think, women just to understand that if there is a difficult case today, no matter how terrible they are feeling, they'll still come there. They know that if they know that somebody, then, they, one of the others can take over their roles, certainly. But I've never had a situation where somebody said, I'm terribly unwell today, but I'm missing my case. That I don't think happens. But then it's also up to the employer to be able to recognize the days that you don't really require them and that work can wait a day. I don't think any heavens are falling. And the other thing is that we're a small office and women also feel comfortable around their own hygiene in in the space. And those that don't can take the day off. It's heavens are not falling.
Absolutely, Payal. Great thoughts there. And I think, say, for example, let's take Kerala. Kerala has gone out and given a discounted attendance of 73% to their, government colleges, saying that others can need to meet 75%, but women can meet 73% of the attendance, which is a huge mark of respect for the fact that you're recognizing that your students also need that comfort and relief. Bihar also extends similar, benefits. But Pooja, coming back to you as an organization, now these are things that government may be able to do, but let's take it from an organizational point of view again. Managing large number of people and then instituting something like a wellness leave. How do you strike a balance? What are your views? Let's say to implement this, what are the challenges that you see might happen? And how do you make a balance for work and compassion?
Sure, thanks for that very relevant question, Ashima. And apart from being the general counsel, I'm also leading DIB, as I said, and I work on a lot of initiatives. So one, I was the fact that I was alluding to that we are working on a across sunlight future of work operating model, right? That how do we go about from where we are to
Yeah.
what we think will be comfortable in the long run, uh, with being productive and efficient. And so whatever we do as an organization, there are, a few focus areas for us. We are very client-centric and very employee-centric, right? And we're working towards a policy which will be wellness leaves for across people, whether it is, any gender agnostic, whosoever wants to avail it. As I alluded to earlier, we're expanding the definition of diversity. Another very important aspect is that sometimes, women only come to us that do not have specific programs or specific policies just made for us,
Yeah.
because in a way, that's thought about as being positive discrimination. And that again creates a sort of exclusion for them. So do something that's across for people, definitely accommodating for any gender specific needs to the extent that it should not be becoming a barrier or a challenge for them, right? And as I think all of the other panelists, co-panelists also alluded to that, hiring remains a challenge. Somewhere or the other, it should not become another factor to consider that, oh, now it's first marriage and then maternity and then specific leave segregated also, or whatever measures you take. Although we've come a long way, but you have to be practical as well. That said, a lot of flexibility that we have these days give, an opportunity that you're having a bad day, or say you're going through a cycle and you do not want to come to office specifically, work from home and still deliver, or maybe not just work for a few hours and then see, because, also it encourages when the workforce sees that you are accommodating, they also come with that mindset that you have to deliver. At least we are at that space that you don't have to be after everybody, that you have to, you know, uh, uh, give your deliverable, because COVID has taught us that wherever we are, we'll be focused on our deliverables or our work. And another very important factor is that when we take care of wellness across, um, we all belong to, whether it is our law firms or our organizations, I think still evolved people. We also have to keep in mind that society at large also has to change. So when we take such measures, of wellness leaves, like we have gone in and made the paternity leave, extended the paternity leave also to 4 weeks, have our policies made very inclusive so that we have same gender inclusions also in the policies. We want to tackle it in another way also, that make the male colleagues also conscious that you can also avail these leaves and probably support the females at your personal space as well. So that's how you're going to change the society also, to an extent that it's not always that, say, women employee has to take leave. If she has some support at home, you kind of make it inclusive and extend it beyond the workplace as well. So that's also there in our mind. And carer, some people have carer responsibilities, maybe towards their parents, towards their pets. These days you have specific leaves for them as well.
Yeah.
So I think we are moving to a positive situation, and this way, if it's wellness across with a focus towards everybody's well-being, therefore we'll be able to take care of specific cycle that women go through, and also kind of reach a situation where it becomes inclusive not only at the workplace but back home as well,
Right,
where everyone
Pooja.
share responsibilities.
Absolutely. Great point on how we can actually balance this as a society and extend the same sort of care leaves to men at the organization and others. Payal, coming back to you, I remember from our offline conversation, you said paternity leaves should be a mandate, so that at the end of the day, an employer has to look at the fact that one takes off for 6 months, one takes off for 3 months. In that case, it's not really coming down to a hiring decision, so to say, that who takes preference. So your thought on really managing that aspect of leaves?
So I'm going to back up a bit and talk about something that I've spoken about on many platforms. It's what I call the problem of the tetrad hex for women, because you have the issue of the fact that you're getting discriminated against at the workplace, which causes you to be the secondary earner at home, and therefore double the burden of work at both places, because you're trying to kind of prove yourself more than your male counterparts. Now, maternity leave, while it's accepted, there's a negative connotation to it. And then there are, as somebody who's personally experienced this, I don't know, many of you are aware, I fought the case, on the underlying dispute was on pregnancy discrimination, young motherhood discrimination, which I very publicly lost at the Supreme Court. But nonetheless, it's important, I think, for employers to push for a mandate for a paternity leave, because the woman has to carry the child for 9 months. There is an aspect of breastfeeding. But what about childcare post that? Why should women not be coming back to work and men be, lending a hand towards childcare? That should be an important recognition. And I completely agree with Pooja that the way to counter positive discrimination would be to allow for men to have menstrual leave for the days their wives or partners are menstruating, to be able to kind of look after them. So, or you could say that take a couple of days off for childcare, lend a hand, but do something with that additional leave.
Yeah.
So unless and until this is not driven for men, it is not going to have the impact that we actually require in society. And may I just take another minute to say something which is a little bit off topic. I've heard so much about this whole abortion debate, where everyone seems to have an opinion on the body of a woman, but not the entire. What I find compelling is the aspect of the absence of men from this debate. While they want to say that a woman should not have an abortion, but I've not heard anybody say that yes, when a woman is forced to have a child that she doesn't want to, that the men should be part of taking responsibility for the child in terms of the finance and caregiving. But I
Right.
found men completely absent from this debate.
But I think it's a good point to make here that India, in my opinion, is still progressive on termination of certain pregnancies until at least a few weeks, as against our Western counterparts. So I think we should laud efforts of the country in that aspect.
Absolutely. But the fear always is that the West leads the conversation, and somehow you find that conversation always veering into areas that were not even part of our conversation.
Right.
So
That's again,
that's
yes,
always a sign
that's a
of need
flag.
of a
That's a
worry.
flag that we should
Red flag,
consider.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
Ashima,
absolutely,
just one point to
yeah,
what Payal was alluding to, that, like we've made the daycare facility for children available to our male employees as well.
right,
That's another initiative, and many organizations are moving towards the similar kind of stand that, that's how you make everybody share the responsibilities back home
right,
and you normalize things. That's where, because you need to have positive, it's not that if you're doing specific things for a particular gender, you don't want to the other gender to go talk about it, that it's being done for a particular initiative.
yeah,
Yeah, and how
absolutely.
do you promote meritocracy as well? So a lot of these things are linked, and you have to tackle them from a long-term perspective, that it doesn't lead to, a hiring challenge or a barrier as well.
I think that's a good point on how you can psychologically kind of work towards it for everybody in an organization. You're kind of sensitizing the men at work that, hey, recognize this for your women employees and your partners at home. So when that conversation really comes into play, that is when you realize that it is something everyone is speaking about. This needs more attention than it has received so far. Great points, Pooja. Meghna, coming to you on how the law of the country looks at it. For instance, positive discrimination is something that, of course, has been a part of our constitution where it's required. Now, if you had to draw a comparison as to how women should take it, like, really explaining it to women at this point, that if you really need to go out there and ask for certain rights and comfort, how should you come out of the conditioned mind of so many years that no, we need to push forward, we need to go at it no matter what are your thoughts on this?
So while Ashima, I really do believe that yes, you need to keep pushing yourself and not be in your comfort zone to make it in whichever field you are. But I think menstrual leave or comfort leave, wellness leave, these would all be in a way extension of Article 21, really. you
Yeah,
know and I think, picking from what Rakhi said, Pooja and Payal, I mean, all three have alluded to this fact that we don't need to have a segregated head, uh, which needs to be like a menstrual leave policy or an act that needs to come in place. But within organizations, you can have, and I believe a lot of private sectors have done it, that if you had 20 leaves, three of those or five of those have been set aside to uh, sort of look after these particular days. Uh, but the difficulty would be, like, for example, for workers who are working in factories, for example, there you don't have the work from home concept, or a daily wager whose earnings are dependent on what you do each day.
yeah,
Those, in those scenarios, perhaps a statutory framework would need to be something that will have to come in. But sometimes you see what just happens is, just by way of discussions, by change in what is happening in the private sector, if policies are changing,
yeah,
there has been a bill which has been placed, which hasn't come through yet, but at least that conversation begins.
yeah,
So according to me, a hard a statutory framework may not always be the starting point. It could be the reverse. It may be the
yeah,
thing that comes at the very end, but at least let's start the conversation of why it's needed. And I think the bill which was tabled also spoke about the other aspect, which is that in a large part of the country, having periods and talking about it is a complete taboo, and women are asked to sit in another room. So from the comforts of our room on, having this discussion, it's a very different. I remember the first time I'd seen that ad where Akshay comes, with the sanitary pad.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a great starting point where men need to acknowledge that women, we are still struggling with requirement for sanitary pad and sanitary hygiene.
yeah,
So I think that's the first aspect that any statute or act will need to meet. And the policy and the leave that comes in workplace would be the second aspect of it. Currently, if someone is really having difficulty, you can still take medical leave.
Yeah.
So, I have been blessed, and I did not suffer acute pains, etc. And I was, in my younger days, I used to play basketball. So as a sports person, what happens when you have these leaves? So there is a whole complicated set of, what happens if you have a match on the day that, so you do need to sometimes push forth, because these things will not take into account that you are having your cycle pain. So
Yeah.
then you look to some medicine, some relief, like someone mentioned, a hot water bag, or do whatever you can physically to relieve the pain. But for the other half of the country where women are struggling, that act would be a big relief that comes through, as and when it does.
Right. Thank you, Meena. I think we have some great points on how we can really actually navigate this problem of, coming to the realization that some women really require this, and how we can have a trickle down effect to the last mile about this. Rakhi, coming to you, what would be your playbook for really organizations who would want to or not want to have this? For instance, if they want to keep menstrual leave and suppose they are not able to extend the same kind of leaves to the others in the organization, is that a concern? You think there'll be a challenge there? Or should they have a balanced leave for everybody?
Okay, so I think organizations are also driven by culture, right, and the tone from the top. Now, the whether an organization will welcome a differentiated menstrual leave, or there should be a part of a uniform wellness program, is completely up to the organization.
Sorry, I think Raki's audio has been cut off and she'll be joining us in a few moments. I can request Pooja to take the conversation forward in the meantime.
Yeah, Ashma. So,
So
what
my
was the
question
particular?
to Raki was, if you're at the position of really chalking out policies or considering whether there should be a differentiated policy or a uniform policy for everybody, what would be a certain playbook or takeaway for other organizations currently contemplating how they should go about it?
See, I would always be for common policy, which will be gender agnostic, so that we take care of any issues that. So we haven't really at our organization launched a survey, but I would know that the opinion would be divided somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So being gender agnostic and being taking into account the wellness of everybody, if we can. We are moving into that direction where we would have wellness needs accommodating for
So how
the
many
needs.
leaves are we actually talking here? Like if we had to put numbers to this?
Sorry about that.
Hi,
No,
Sorry
no
Raki.
problem.
about that.
Sorry, yeah, we have you back. I know you got cut off. I am currently discussing the same with
Sure,
Pooja. I'll
I'll
just
come
come
back to
back to you.
this. Yes, sure.
So
Sorry
Thank
about
it'll
you.
that.
be.
There's some disruption at my end today. Some connectivity lines getting restored, and that is kind of bringing
No
down the
worries.
network.
No
Yeah.
worries, Raki. Thank you. Pooja will take your view and then quickly go to Raki.
Yeah, so it'll be modeled on, the way the sick leaves are, and it'll be merged together. So
Okay.
we're working on the numbers, but it'll be, could be around 7 to 10 spread
So
across the year.
in all the whole of year, could you give us some example of the segregation of casual sick care leave? What
No,
this eventually comes
no,
down
these
to?
carer leave, these wellness leaves will be across, apart from the other earned leaves that you have, and it could be
Yeah.
in the range of 7 to 10 spread
Okay.
across the year. And these are leaves specifically, right? We also have to take into account that we are flexible.
Hmm.
Right now that we are into an hybrid operating model, there are days where you can easily work from home. So
Right.
then that also kind of takes into account the difficult days that anybody could face coming to work.
Yeah.
And medical or your cycle pain or other problems apart, we even take into account, just to give you a very small example, that So there were certain days in the winters which were very challenging, and there were certain managers who just said that, you could just operate from the comfort of your home and just deliver.
Yeah.
So we go up to that extent because there are days where we see that employees probably will not be able to travel from across NCR to a particular place, and we take a conscious call, oh, you could just work from home. So when you're operating in such an environment, any positive step towards any kind of wellness leaves or any kind of accommodation takes care of where we eventually want to be, whether
Yeah.
you call it by a particular name or not. But I agree to Meghna's point that, we're all, as I said, that all probably at evolved places. What's happening at the grassroots level is still a challenge because, there at places, say in manufacturing or other difficult places, they don't have any kind of flexibility. How do we solve
Yeah.
for that?
Right. Absolutely, Pooja. And I will take Rakhi's point on this now. Rakhi, you've heard the panel on the issues that are there. Coming back to you again, currently looking at the corporate space, unfortunately unable to do it for the unorganized sector at this moment in this panel. But in the corporate space, how should leaders or decision makers, policy makers go about a differentiated or a uniform policy, and having heard the challenges in the minds of people, whether that is about hiring, that is about a sentiment in the organization that why should one gender be allowed to take time off work. I mean, these are all thoughts that may
Sure.
go around an organization, may or may
Yes.
not be right.
Yes. So first of all, I would think that if an organization really wants to implement a menstrual leave policy, the best strategy is always, of course, a uniform, inclusive wellness policy, right? If that cannot be done due to certain reasons, if they want to implement a menstrual accommodation policy, I would say, not even a leave policy, because I would call it a menstrual accommodation policy. And in that, I would if a client were to ask me, I would bring in some rest days into it. Okay, so it is like a biorhythm rest that a woman may need, and then compensate it. And because I have implemented some of these steps in my own teams to kind of balance out the sentiments around this, so and then compensate it, like if you lose say 8 hours of working a day, if you work half an hour extra, you can easily make that up, and that is not a cost that women will not be willing to pay, right? And it kind of offsets the angst in the other gender that somebody is taking an entire 8-hour working day off, right? So I think we first say it's an accommodation policy and not a leave policy, then we say it is rest, right? And now with hybrid work models being there, working from home is a great facilitator to this initiative, right? So I would say, first of all, kind of brand it correctly, right? Publicize it correctly, because a lot of our sentiments are driven by how we interpret or perceive a thing, right? So branding the leave as a right, with the right verbiage is very important. And how do you set the tone amongst the other gender about that? How do you make them feel that this is ultimately towards a certain objective, and which is the benefit of humankind in totality? um, Whenever somebody tells me to draft a menstrual leave policy, I'm like, no, I'm not going to draft a menstrual leave policy. I'm going to draft a menstrual accommodation policy. Okay, so I think that's for the organizations which cannot uniformalize it in a more gender neutral way. The only way to break mindset barriers is when the differential or the delta between a male entitlement and a female entitlement is narrower. So we as a community, as humanity, as lawmakers, as advisors to corporations, have to ensure that delta becomes smaller, right? The moment that delta becomes smaller, it will become normalized in the minds of people, and it will not be seen as a privilege which I'm getting because of my body. Because remember, I also have a responsibility and a pain which is kind of cast upon me by nature. And this morning, I in fact wrote a few lines on this, and they read: "The flow of life through my body to bring another to life. Hold my hand, rest my pain. At last, humanity shall gain." Right? So ultimately, we are all striving towards making the activities of nature, more pleasant on women. And there is another aspect to it, which is incentivizing womanhood in a way, because with the decreasing population growth rate in the developed countries, and with women suffering endometriosis, and women having the option to kind of stop menstrual cycles altogether, right? You can get a hysterectomy done, and you can just stop it altogether. So there has to be some assistive aid by the entire society to make sure that women's reproductive health is protected the way nature wanted it to be protected, right? So I would say that there are several means. It just requires a bit of creative thinking how to solve these problems, and with a lot of behavioral coaching, and legislative, and cultural measures. All this can be put in place. It will take us a long time, but the journey has well started, I would say.
Thank you, Raki. Great lines there. I think you make important points about verbiage and driving the culture towards uh, really recognizing what womanhood is about. What are the natural requirements of people that you're working with? That also goes a long way in retaining the talent that you have.
Right.
You don't want women falling off the career path for reasons like these. And it's been great having all of your thoughts today, panelists. I'll do one quick round with you. We have about 8 minutes to go. Your final thought on one message to women in general, how to power through life in general. So I'll come to you, Pooja. Let's start there. Your message.
Uh, Thanks for all of you for sharing your thoughts. It was definitely a very good session, and thanks, Ashima. But I would like to close, the way I have always led life and worked is that I've not particularly hinged or focused on just the issues or that I'm a woman. This is the way I'll have to behave with a particular set of people or with the other gender. I have at least hadn't have that block in my mind is what I assume, and that's where but at the same time focusing, keeping a very rational approach to what each gender goes through, that has to be there in our mind. And if we work with that approach, not only problems that women go through. In fact, I just share that we've started celebrating International Men's Day also at our organization. There are particularly mental well-being issues faced by men also that nobody focuses on. And we should know that the suicide rate in men is more than women, right? So we all focus on areas that on issues that each of the gender faces and even beyond.
Yeah.
That's how we can, lead to a situation where everybody will come together and eventually be at a space that we'll all be very comfortable talking about the issues or the challenges that we go through in our day-to-day lives, and will lead to an ecosystem which will allow all of us to bring our whole selves to wherever we are.
Right, Pooja. Thank you so much, Pooja. Payal, coming to you for your thoughts to close the discussion.
So I think that women have to stop normalizing menstruation. Women have a tendency to constantly, because there's this uh, discrimination that we feel in our workplace, in our personal lives, that we have this tendency to play down everything. I'm in great pain, but I can handle it. And particularly women in places of power have to stop normalizing it, because remember, repetitive invalidation will lead to a dismissal of the recognition of the fact that of the intensity of the pain and discomfort that you have during periods. It's important for us women that are in positions of power and the ability to make the change, because finally this has to, and as Meghna rightly said, it has to trickle down to the rural women that don't even have access to hygiene. They
Yeah.
cannot take a day off if they're a daily wager. So I think a lot of it rests on our shoulders. Don't expect men to do it, but that change has to be driven by women.
Thank you, Payal. Great message. And I think I'd like to make one point which we kind of missed during the discussion, that when we speak of menstrual or period leaves, we're also looking at women in their entire reproductive years, because then there are issues with period pains. So I think Sudha Murthy made a great point on how do you really look at your hormonal health. So all those conversations need to become part of our organizational setup in one way or the other. I'll come to Meghna for her closing remarks. Meghna, over to you.
Uh, so it's been a great conversation. Only one concern that I have, one red flag that I want to raise to all women, that as and when these wellness leaves come through, let us not misuse them. Let us, put it to use when you need to. For example, if I have through my life not had period pain where I needed a leave,
Yeah,
don't misuse that leave just because it's being given to you, so that the one who genuinely needs it may use it.
yeah,
The other is that the point that Pooja made very well, that as organizations, as let's all be flexible and adaptable for needs of all employees, not just women. And the conversation of menstrual policy, menstrual leave, menstrual hygiene is very, very relevant. And so I believe that the more we speak about it, hopefully it will keep getting more and more, I think, not get put on the back burner, which is the tendency, because this is a one issue which doesn't seem to be taken all that seriously as one would have wanted, given that the workplace today comprises of a lot of women. I think conversation needs to be done very seriously on this.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you so much for your message. Raki, last thoughts.
Yeah, my thought would be that as a woman, I would, if I were taking this leave, I would commit to no loss of productivity, right? And I would make it up at another time, and which is a fair ask for the organization and for, balancing it out with my male colleagues. So I would give it back in terms of my hard work and productivity back to the organization. I wouldn't take it as a privilege and then say, okay, today is gone, so it's a minus work day for me. No, I'll compensate it and I'll give it back in terms of productivity. So that is a commitment. If every woman looks at a menstrual leave or a menstrual accommodation with that, I think the bias against menstrual leave and menstrual accommodation will be kind of assuaged.
Right. Thank you, Raki. Thank
Ashima,
you.
if I could just add
Sure.
one point to what Payal, Raki, and Meghna alluded to, that it goes beyond just menstrual challenges. Women's body is complex, and we have to, one, be very aware of what we are going through. Sometimes we just keep on taking the pain, not kind of looking into that what we are going through, and even the breast cancer awareness, cervical cancer awareness, all of that is very important. So I agree with Payal that, we sometimes think, oh, we can take this, just normalize, keep on moving. That's not the way to go forward. In fact, the medical field has also evolved. And I think Raki also said that there are a lot of ways that we can take care of ourselves. It's just that we never even think of making time for ourselves first.
Yeah.
That what should we be looking into? Right, so a lot of awareness is required, and like we do some programs for breast cancer awareness within our organization, and we are thinking of extending it to all men, again going back to that point, that make everybody aware.
Right. I think a certain celebrity created quite an
Yeah.
uproar by creating awareness about cervical cancer. But nonetheless, I think it's a thought that requires conversation, at least sensitizing people, and
Yes.
whatever extreme measures are being taken may be debated. But the point remains that women really need to come out there and care for themselves, and that is how you give back to your family and your workplaces. So, thank you so much all for joining us with your wonderful messages and thoughts. I'm sure this is going to pave the way for a lot of organizations who are on who are still contemplating what they want to do. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Good.
Lovely meeting you all.